Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 203 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle, StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days, just $1. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. All right, I'm your host, Anthony Wren, and the show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Want to get in touch with me? Shoot me an email to StrengthCoachPodcast@gmail.com. All right, on the Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about a book he's reading called Most Likely to Succeed. Also about some questions he got about new functional training for sports, and that includes his thoughts on rear foot elevated split squat jumps, static holds, and programming the anti-core exercises. For the Ask the Equipment experts with Perform Better, Aaron McGurr joins us to talk about the current sale, the final one-day seminars coming up, and the newly released summit schedule. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Rachel Cosgrove is on to discuss designing your business plan. Good stuff coming up from Rachel. The Functional Movement System segment, Kyle Kiesel is on to continue his 3-part series on breathing. Today he talks about the new online breathing class that FMS is offering, and he does an actual breathing assessment in real time. Pretty cool. I have Chris Holder on for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment. Chris is the head strength and conditioning coach at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, master RKC. He's also a doctor of medical Qigong. Spoke to him about his articles, Training Failure, When to Push Young Athletes and When to Wait, Cal Poly's 8-week deadlift program, an article on Qigong, and the key to your speed. The key to speed is your spine. That and much more coming up from Chris Holder in a little bit. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the Coach's Corner. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you? Surviving. We survived the snowstorm. We had a nice little snow day yesterday, so it was good.
Yeah, a little less than they expected, right?
Yes.
Up there
significantly less, although actually the ice, Cindy's windshield wipers broke off today, so there was a lot of ice. We had to get out early and kind of chip it off the cars and start. It was a little, probably less snow, but maybe a little bit bigger mess than they thought.
Yeah. I actually worked yesterday because I can walk to work, and I was coming home around 5 o'clock, and it was like a sheet of ice on the sidewalks because nobody had shoveled, and then the ice came down, so it was a little crazy, but good stuff. Well, you must have had time to read, because then you posted about your book that you've been reading, and I want to talk a little bit about, get a sense for what this book's about. Most Likely to Succeed. You're loving this book. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's just a great book on the American education system and sort of, I guess, much more about what's wrong than what's right with the American education system. And it's been really interesting for me because I think watching my children's education, I get frustrated, and it's very much, I think it translates into what we're doing, because I do feel like we're teaching and we're educating. And when you see the conventional education system, and this is what the book talks about, it's very much driven towards memorizing stuff to get good test scores so you'll get in college. And sometimes you look at things and think, but are these kids really learning anything, or are they just memorizing stuff to get a test, or are they going to college? And then is the stuff they're memorizing, does it really matter in the big scheme of things? And one of the things they talked about, so you know me, I'm a page folder, so I'm looking at the book right now. I have it in my hands. I've got about 60 pages to go. I'm at 200 pages. There's probably at least 50 foldovers in my book right now, and you start looking at things. Like, one of the stats that they pop up with is that 80% of the people in the United States do not use mathematics beyond 8th grade level. When you start thinking about calculus and all this stuff, and you just realize, wow, are my kids spending a massive amount of time learning things? And they talk about how you won't be smarter than the average smartphone, that anything that you wanted to know between Khan Academy and some of these other things, you can just type it in and get the answer. So now we need a different kid, because the subtitle of the book is Preparing Our Kids for the Innovation Era. And the idea that when you look at the stuff that you and I are doing now, podcasting, internet companies, all these things, you realize, are our kids going to be prepared for that? I get really excited about Michaela because she's going to go major in communications and digital media, which is one of the things we talked about. And because I think that's where it's all going. So she's going to go to college and probably learn things that are going to be valuable when she gets out of college. But I look at Mark in 6th grade and think, sometimes I feel like it's a waste of time. They spend a lot of time studying for tests. They don't read nearly enough. So it's just super, super interesting to me. Maybe because I'm a child of educators, but
yeah. Mike, let's. I'm going to go a little extreme ownership on you here, which is something I'm reading right now, which is absolutely fantastic, and I know you've read it already. Is it our fault as parents, though, too? Like, we need to take a little bit of blame? Like, here's something you just said: Mark doesn't read enough. Isn't that on you?
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I said that to Cindy as I was reading the book. He was reading before he got into school and had more work. He would read more on his own. In elementary school, one of his homework requirements was that he had to read for 20 minutes every night. Now we never get that. And he's like, oh, I do guided reading. I read during homework. I read during, you know what I mean? It's like, it's literally, we've seen this shift in 1 year where it's very much like this sort of standardized test model where they're learning vocabulary words and math facts and all these things. But the kind of basic stuff that you really hope that they would learn is getting glossed over. So yeah, some of it, and that we talked about that the other day. I was saying to Cindy, we need to start having more mandatory reading time. Like, well, okay, even if you don't have to read for school, we're all going to read, and we're going to set a, like, I think I set a good example anyway, in the sense that I read a lot,
Yeah.
but it's different. Michaela doesn't like to read, never has, but she has excellent verbal skills, which I think compensate, and she actually writes really well, which helps her to compensate. But she's just now, as a high school senior, I think starting to see the sort of the joy of recreational reading. I think most kids view it from a task basis, and so they don't become recreational readers. And again, because they're not, when we think about the educational system, even if they're reading, they're made to read things that they don't want to read, as opposed to someone saying, hey, I would much rather go with the idea, I want you to read a book that you want to read, and I want you to write a book report about it. And for me, the way I would like my kids to be educated, I'd love that to be every month, where every month it's like, okay, you got to read a book and do a book report. And you got to read when you're home. And, I don't care if Mark reads books about hockey and Michaela reads books about hockey, but I want them to read books, because that's how you improve your vocabulary and that's how you improve your reading comprehension. So just, I would really encourage everybody, particularly if you have kids, to read it. But I also am viewing it from the standpoint of, how does it reflect? So it's interesting. And this, we always say we're not going to talk long, and then we end up talking long. One of the things that I realized from a hiring standpoint, I said this to somebody the other day. Ken Whittier is one of the best people we've ever hired. Kevin Carr, one of the best people we've ever hired. We've hired some unbelievable people. I have no idea what their grades were like. I have no idea how they did on standardized tests. I never asked anybody, what was your grade point average? What were your SATs? Because we hire for interpersonal skills. And I think that's why we're so successful, because instead of us, sending out for resumes and getting recommendations like, oh, this kid was the best strength and conditioning student I've ever had, and, and he wrote an amazing paper on post-activation potentiation, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the bullshit that you would get from a professor, we're like, oh, let him do the internship, and then we'll see if we like him, and we'll keep the best ones.
There you go.
Which is what we do. But you just realize that in the conventional educational world, and even probably in the conventional job search world, people would get very tied up in the fact, they went to state school, and they only had a 2.9 GPA, and their SAT scores were only this, and you realize that I mean, maybe it does matter. Maybe all those guys working for us and girls are super smart and did great in school, but I can honestly tell you that I have no idea.
Yeah. What's interesting you said about Michaela, is starting to realize the joy of the reading, of the leisurely reading as well. And it's funny. I was a voracious reader up until like 8th grade, 9th grade. And then I just kind of rebelled against I don't know, the school reading, and I stopped reading. And it wasn't until I was 21, till I was living in LA. I was a bicycle messenger, and it was like first year I wasn't going to be in college. And I felt like an idiot. I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time I'm not really learning something. So I like jumped in to all of these Steinbeck and Hemingway and all these classic books that I was supposed to read in high school, like Of Mice and Men and The Grapes of Wrath, and all of these things. And that actually got me back into reading, kind of realizing, oh my God, I really do love reading. So I think you kind of you start to kind of feel your way around it, and you go through your peaks and valleys. But if we push them, I guess we can make it happen. Good stuff.
But I think you're right when you think about that. I think sometimes what we do is we rebel against the system, and then we realize. I always say to people, you're not screwing me.
Yeah,
Parent, you're screwing yourself. But it's hard, people. I can remember a family member of mine bragging about not having read a book since high school, and thinking, "Wow, you're bragging about that, but that's not bragging."
Yeah. Jesus. Coach, let's do a little kind of rapid fire from your blog, because I thought these were good, questions that everybody should know about. Somebody had asked some questions about, new functional training for sports. What's your opinion about rear foot elevated split squat jumps? Can they be used to develop power?
Yeah, and I said that we use them a lot, just not in season. I like them as a summer thing. I've gone in season. I'll be more of an explosive step up guy, which is interesting because I don't like step ups, but I do like explosive step ups. And I don't like the rear foot elevated jump in season because I feel like you can get a little extra tug on that backside hip flexor that we probably don't want. So we'll tend to use that more. And it's funny. I have Brian Mann's, I'm trying to see the title of it, but it's his velocity based training book that he sent to me that I've got to read. And I think that may be one of the areas where we're missing the boat a little bit. And it may end up being a situation where I think particularly for lower body, we may need to be doing a little more velocity-based stuff. I don't know if I'm a big fan of trying to bench press fast. Maybe we should be throwing heavier med balls. But I feel like there's something there that we probably should be tapping into maybe a little bit better than what we have been. So I'm going to kind of dig into Brian's book a little and maybe come up with some stuff that might make our summer program a little bit different.
All right, good stuff. Why do you emphasize 5-second holds in a quadruped opposite extensions and other exercises?
It always goes back. My buddy Al Bisnick, who's a physical therapist, said, if you want the muscles to stabilize, give them time. Or if you want to work stabilizers, give them time to stabilize. And so when you start thinking about 5-second holds, you can really get somebody like, just say quadruped. I can have that person concentrate on a really hard 5-second exhale where they have to count to 5 as they blow out. And I can really have them concentrate on that glute contraction. And I can really work with them. I always said in the stability exercises, because the mistakes are so subtle, you really need them to be done slow and for long holds so you can get somebody, you can kind of cue them back in the right position. Like, okay, feel this. Now feel this during the course of that 5 seconds. This is what I want versus this is what I don't want. You can poke them a little bit in the stomach. Are you getting that abdominal tension that I want from the exhale? Or is it just kind of a passive, air coming out of a tire kind of exhale?
Yeah, and the next question was about why don't you do longer planks? But I'm going to kind of bring it back to this. I like the 5-second holds better anyway. Like you said, I do 10-second holds with bridges and quadruped to start out first set. But I always love the idea, and same thing with plank with McGill. You're never holding something for that long anyway. It's always this idea of kind of tension and relaxation. So I kind of like that idea for that reason as well.
Yeah, and I think that, and one of the things you realize with McGill never said he was testing for long periods of time, but I think people took what he was doing for testing and then applied it to training, and I think he himself would tell you not to do that.
Well, he'd tell you do 10 seconds. That's what he recommends.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. But his tests were tests of how long can you hold a back extension, how long can you hold the plank. And I think people saw that stuff and then thought, oh, I'll make that into training. And even the guy who had you do it as the testing wouldn't want you to do it as the training. So It's interesting.
All right. What number of exercise ratios would you suggest between anti-rotation, anti-extension, and anti-lateral flexion exercises? Are there any recommended stability levels?
I mean, I think that's one of those things, and it's funny. I don't remember exactly how I answered that question, but we were kind of thinking basically that there's one of each at least per week. That's sort of where we've been. But then things start to get cut out as you get, in a 4-day workout, it's really easy to do because in a 4-day workout, we can have a chop on one day and a lift on one day and a push-pull on another day and an anti-rotation on another day. And then we can do anti-extension on a day that we do chop or lift, and we can do 2 different anti-extensions. There's so much more. I think your smorgasbord increases in that 4-day workout. Now you get to 3 days, you get 25% less spots for core work. You go to 2 days, you've got 50% less spots for core work, and you've got maybe even less than that because now you've got to get all those exercises into 2 days. So suddenly I may look and think, okay, push-up's a good anti-extension exercise, so my anti-extension core is going to come from push-up versus doing bench press and rollout. I'm going to try to combine those two. I might emphasize things differently as it goes along. So I don't know if it's as simple. I do think you want to think kind of 1-to-1-to-1, like don't overemphasize one. Don't overemphasize anti-extension. Don't overemphasize anti-lateral flexion. If you look at kind of even, McGill's big 3, he's got an anti-extension and anti-lateral flexion. He's got an actual extension when you think about his, his quadruped opposite, his bird dogs, whatever it is. But he actually has a flexion in there in terms of the McGill curl up, which we don't. But we will maybe get a get up in there. So I think that the other thing that you do, and this is what I've talked about this in the past, is as soon as you get away from plank and side plank and start to get a little more quote unquote functional or active or whatever it is, suddenly things have that anti-rotation element becomes part of everything.
All right, good stuff. Coach, I'm going to let you go. I will see you on Friday because we are refilming Strength Coach TV. I have actually 10 facilities between Thursday and Friday, and excited to come up to MBSC because last time we were there, it's about half of what you have now, and we've gotten 51,000 views on that first Strength Coach TV. So we're starting it up this Thursday and Friday. I'm doing 10 facilities. I'm going to see you 9 o'clock at MBSC. I just wanted to get this recorded, so in case you're late, I have something to go back on. So, Coach, thanks for coming on today.
Hopefully I don't screw that up.
All right, Coach.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, now it's time for the Ask the Equipment Experts with Perform Better. I am here with the lovely and talented Erin McGurr. Erin, thanks for coming on.
Anthony, thanks for having me.
All right. Tell me about the sale. What's going on?
Right now, the sale is a free pack of mini bands when you spend over $50. Unfortunately, tax and shipping does not count for that. So when you spend over $50 for a product, you will get a free pack of mini bands, and we don't just send you the yellow ones. You get to actually pick what color you want. So good news for everybody.
All right. Very cool. Okay, so the Boston, like we told everybody, sold out. Boston One Day, Learn by Doing seminar. But you got 3 more coming up. Tell us the dates and the locations of those 3.
The next 3 coming up, we have April 1st down in Fort Lauderdale. We also have April 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona, and May 6th in Dallas, Texas. So we'll go south and then kind of west and make our way back. So looking forward to the last 3.
Nice. You got some Sunbelt locations there. Very cool.
Yes.
I got excited. I saw Charlie Weingroff came in my mail the other day. He's on the cover of the Summit brochure. Tell us a little bit about the dates and the locations for those so we can kind of keep an eye out for them.
Yes. Charlie came in my mail as well. He was the only one short enough to fit on the cover. But we have 4, I had to. We have 4 locations, same as last year. Orlando, we're bringing it back to Orlando. That is June 1st through the 4th. Providence, June 22nd to the 25th. Chicago, July 27th to the 30th. And Long Beach, August 24th to the 27th.
All
So
right.
looking forward to those.
Yeah, I was looking through the brochure and saw some, certainly some new presenters, lots of new female presenters. So looking forward to that. E, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
That is Kyle Kiesel with the Functional Movement segment. This is the third of our three-part series on breathing and breathing dysfunction. So welcome back. Today we're going to just talk about our new online education course all about breathing and breathing dysfunction. So the first two segments we sort of told you why it was so important. Now we're going to go through the class. I mentioned that we took on this research to really say, listen, we're part of a system, and a system can't miss anyone, right? So we could throw exercises at people and throw a technique or two at people, and you've probably seen those out there, and they work. They work most of the time, there's no doubt. But we don't want to let anybody trickle through the cracks. So in a systematic approach, we have to have a way to capture any potential problems, and that's what we learned from our research. So from the research, we realized there were three distinct categories or dimensions of breathing dysfunction. But first of all, we just had to say, do you have any of those? Do you have any breathing dysfunction? Or are you okay? And if you're fine, no breathing dysfunction, move on. But if you have one of the three, we need to deal with that. So we developed what we call our breathing screen. And a screen, just like out of medicine, we're screening that the problem might be there. So we developed from our research a breathing screen to say, if you pass the screen, we're pretty comfortable you don't have a problem. If you flunk the screen or you're positive on the screen, we're pretty sure you do have a problem. It doesn't diagnose the problem, but it tells us there's a problem there. So we looked at the gold standard measures of each of the three areas of breathing dysfunction, the biomechanical, the biochemical, and the sort of situational breather. And we utilized gold standard measures and took a number of other measures that can be done by a trainer, by a strength coach, by a physical therapist, athletic trainer. Really, you don't have to have medical background to do the test, to see if there's anything we could use to capture this category, if you will, or this entity of breathing dysfunction. And we're in our second study, as I mentioned, but what we found in the first study and validated in the second study is simply looking at how well someone holds their breath or breath hold time is the window in to see if they might have a problem. So what we showed in our research is that if you can hold your breath in a certain way, we'll go through in a second, for 25 seconds or longer, and you're negative on 4 simple questions that we ask you, then we're going to say you passed the screen, you're okay, and your breathing's unlikely to be the problem, you're good to go. Anything else tells us that you might have a problem. So it was pretty cool that we're able to get it down to something clinically that anybody can do, a simple breath hold time, and then these 4 questions. And I would just say, I know many of you are probably driving or out exercising or whatever, but if you're sitting at your home or at your desk, just take a second, sit up straight, and we'll take you through this breath hold time. You're sitting tall, and all we're going to do is get in touch with your breathing. You're breathing in and out. And what you're going to do at the end of an exhale, a natural exhale, just plug your nose and see how long you can hold that. And we're looking at that 25 seconds as being the value or the cut score that we found, that if you're below the 25, then you likely have some breathing dysfunction. If you're north of 25, then we feel like you're pretty good. So again, it's breathe in, breathe out. At the end of a natural exhale, hold your breath. Keep going, not until you absolutely have to take a breath, but until you notice any little wiggle, any little muscle activation that occurs. So again, that end point's a real important point. So not going under water like a seal here, but just any little muscle activation when you feel like you need to give. Anything that's below 25 seconds tells us that there's a problem. And it's a beautiful little metric because now we've got something that we can measure and go with in the clinic. So our recommendation that we go through in detail in the course is that if you are below the 25 or you flunk the screen, we're going to suggest that breathing's a problem and that you incorporate breathing retraining into your model, whatever your model is, and then recheck in a couple of weeks. You should see that get better. If the breathing number, that breath hold time number, is not improving, then maybe at some point you need to consider a breathing referral out to an expert. But it gives you a metric to say, listen, today breathing's probably more important than anything else that we can work on, and you can sync breathing retraining right into what you do. So it's a nice metric. If you're a clinician, if you're used to hands-on treatment from rehab or medical, then the course goes into detailed assessment techniques. When we say assessment, we're talking hands-on techniques. You're getting your hands on that trunk, seeing how it moves. You're doing specific assessment tools from the literature that helps dial in the breathing dysfunction a little closer. So we go into the screen, we go into the assessment, we cover in detail the normal and abnormal breathing, and we recognize that good functional breathing is adaptable, and we go through that in detail, and we recognize that. So having the metrics is really important in terms of following things for improvement. If your patient client's not getting better, then maybe you could consider a referral. And then we close the course with a real nice a way to look at breathing retraining for those that you feel could benefit from it, is, as we said, that flunked the screen. And what we're looking at there is our breathing retraining exercises by posture. So just like we do movement retraining, we're going to look at breathing retraining by posture. Our research showed that, and our experience has shown that different postures can squeeze that breath, and people can be much more dysfunctional in one posture than they are in others. So we go through a lot of nice little exercises by posture to help with your breathing retraining. So we're excited to get this course out. It's been a long haul for us in terms of the research and getting it together. It's online. It's exciting class. If you're familiar with our education model, it's great. If it's brand new to you, it would be a nice window into the system. So real excited to get that out, and hope you find it educational and helpful for you, your patients, and your clients. For more information, check out functionalmovement.com.
Hi, everybody. It's Rachel Cosgrove with the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. And we are going to talk about a business plan today. One of the keys to setting up your business, you got to make sure you have some kind of a business plan. Now, when we talk about a business plan, the only problem with a business plan is it cannot be too rigid or too detailed, because business is fluid, business is dynamic, business changes. You could have this perfect plan all written down in stone, and then next week something changes, and you might have an emergency happen, or maybe somebody something didn't work out quite the way you wanted, or maybe you see that there's a demand in a different area that you didn't expect, and pretty soon you're changing directions, and you got to be ready to do that. You got to be ready to move fast and change directions. So as you put together this business plan, first I just want to say, don't get too stuck on a detailed, this is exactly how it has to be, because your core business could morph into something completely different. When we first started Results Fitness, we had no idea that we would be doing what we do now. We didn't know that instead throughout the years we've listened to the demand. We didn't know that we'd start a second business of Results Fitness University, but that started with personal trainers reaching out to us and wanting to come out and learn from us. And so, that was the direction we ended up going in. So you got to be open to, change, and be open to, that things could change. It's going to be dynamic, and don't get too, stuck on a plan. With that said, let's talk about that business plan. The best way to do it is actually to think bigger picture. So it's more productive to create a simple, concise, overall bigger picture rather than a super detailed plan. So here's what we want to include in your business plan, as you are putting this together. And even if you do have your business open, it's good to go back and, look at, what are you doing? What are your, all of these things that I'm about to list are all important for you in your business. So first, your vision and your purpose. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be legendary for? What are you trying to accomplish? For us, really, when we opened Results Fitness, it was to really create a gym that was something different. Now, this was 17 years ago, so there was not a gym like ours at the time. And, for us, we were frustrated with the standards in our industry, and we were really frustrated with, the fact that it was hard to make this a career in our industry. So we wanted to create a place where our trainers could have a career, they could have benefits. We really took it seriously as a profession, and took it seriously, as a business. And so that was, part of our vision, and, still is to change the way fitness is done. And that's changing the way fitness is done is not just for our clients' experience, but also for the people who work for us, making sure that it's, we actually have right now, part of our mission is to be the last gym you'll ever work out at. Because all of our clients, when they come to our gym and they start working out, they may try and go work out at other gyms, but they always end up coming back to our gym. And so once they've, experienced what we do, we want them to, this to be the place that they want to stay. Of course, unless they move or go, someplace else. But as long as they're in our area, we want them to work out at our gym. And then we also want it to be the last gym you would ever want to work at. We want our trainers to feel like, man, this place is awesome. Like, how can we, make this such an awesome place to work that they never go looking elsewhere. They never will go work for one of our other competition. And so that's just, something you want to think about. What is your vision? What is your purpose? So that's number one on your business plan is have, your vision and your purpose. Number two, your core values. Get your core values written down. Keep them short, keep them actionable. Your core values are the base of how you're going to hire, how you're going to set your whole business up. Every decision you make should be run through your core values. And so really, really, take the time to do this. I strongly encourage you to sit down and think about the core values of your company, which are also going to be your own personal core values, and they're going to be the core values of your team members, of, everybody that you're bringing onto your team. And they're also going to be the core values of your clients too, really. As you start to build your culture, it's going to be, people that are attracted to those core values and that have those core values. So get those core values written down. So we got your vision and your purpose, your core values, and then we can get a little more specific and really think about our goals and our targets. What is it that I want to accomplish? How many members do I want to have? Really, what is the target that I'm trying to hit? What's the bigger picture? So again, don't get too, caught up in the details, but definitely you want to have that target, that vision, that, that objective of where you're going. And next we want to have that strategy. How are we going to do it? How are we going to deliver these services? So thinking about, really the day-to-day operations of how are you going to actually, deliver what you're promising, deliver that, to create those goals and those targets. So far we have vision and purpose, core values, goals, and then strategy and operations. And then the second to last is your team. Thinking about who specifically do you need on your team to have, who are the key players that you're going to need to really create the business and the dream that you want to create, to have the vision and the purpose come true. Who are those key players you need on your team? And then last is your USP, your unique selling proposition, what differentiates you, what sets you apart, what makes you different from everything else that's out there. Why you and not somebody else? So how can you really set yourself apart? Who are you for and who are you not for? And really get those things down. So that's really what should be included in a business plan. I think a lot of people try to get super specific with, I'm going to have X numbers and this and that. And, it's more about thinking through that bigger picture. So vision and purpose, core values, your goals, your strategy and operations, who's going to be on your team, and then your unique selling proposition. So start thinking about those things as you get your business plan figured out. And if you've been in business, please revisit these things because they will really change your business and really make sure you're headed in the right direction. So hopefully this was helpful and everyone enjoyed it. Again, this is Rachel Cosgrove, Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check out resultsfitnessuniversity.com for our upcoming events, and we hope to see you guys all soon at one of our events.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach. And today I have on Chris Holder, and he is the head strength and conditioning coach at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. He has a football background. He's a master RKC. 20 years of coaching experience at the college level gives him a little bit of an edge in developing his athletes. He's also a doctor of medical Qigong, and he's found training success with the unique blend of all of these different things, the Eastern medical and spiritual approaches with some of the Western strength science. So, Coach, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. It's good to be here.
Yeah, like I said, to you earlier, one of the things that kind of attracted me towards getting you on the show was this blend of the Eastern medical stuff and the spiritual approaches with some of the other Western strength science stuff that you were talking about wasn't just like you were just talking about just the different Qigong stuff, but I think the way it looked like you kind of found this balanced approach, I was really interested in. I found you through movementlectures.com. Larry Draper had put on an article that you did called "Training Failure: When to Push Young Athletes and When to Wait." So I wanted to start out with that. Let's give us an overview of this article.
So, it was one of those things where kind of the big question is, do you continue to coach, or do you actually let them experience some level of failure? And what I mean by that is never going to put a kid in a situation where they're going to get injured or any of that stuff. But you find that, especially anymore, the attention span of a lot of these athletes is not real long. And so you find yourself coaching the same 2 or 3 things over and over again, and you realize quickly that nobody's listening or individuals aren't listening. And so the intent of that article was more of giving other coaches permission at some point, and who am I to give permission, but just experience dictates it, that they at a certain point let them kind of operate on their own devices, and if they can't find their way, eventually they're going to come back around and they're going to find that impetus to be interested, and then you can really hammer home some of these fine details, because when you're working. All the stuff that we do at Cal Poly, we kind of pride ourselves on being really solid technical coaches. We want the athletes to. I was a guy who, when I played, I just wanted to know why. I'll do anything you want me to do, and I swear to God, I'll give you the best effort. Just tell me why we're doing it. And so I coach from that perspective. I want my athletes to have a real solid foundation as to how this is going to translate into what they're doing on the field. Help them understand why we're doing things, and to the degree in which I coach technique and to the time we spend developing those things, you'll have some of those athletes who show up, but they're not mentally present. And you can see them, the things that we've covered so many times, they should be picking up by now. They should know it by now. Everybody around them is doing it, yet they, for some reason, don't have it. The idea of that article was to, at some point, you're going to have to let them fail. You're going to have to let them experience a certain level of failure so that either it's what makes them go away, which is, maybe terrible to some people, or what makes them, have that knee-jerk, all of a sudden interest in what we're doing. And so that's kind of the road that I took with that one. And, I have mixed reviews on it, but I found you with it, so I think it was a success.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, let's kind of dive a little deeper into this. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. So do you feel like it's a generational thing? Have you seen this get worse? Because like you were talking about, the will to win is dying a slow death. Talk to us about this as a generational thing.
So I don't want to dogpile these kids, but I understand. And some of this is me. I'll take my fair share of the blame of it. When I played, we were a bunch of gritty dudes, and winning meant everything to us. That's why we did it. And we were emotionally, you could see it at the end of games that we would lose. It kind of tore us apart a little bit. And what you're seeing now is, I don't know if it's they don't care about winning or if it's just not as big a priority for them. But what we're starting to see right now is there's no kind of emotional investment that I'm seeing with a lot of these athletes with winning and losing. They don't get ultra high when we win. They don't get super low when we lose. And I personally can't, I don't get it, because I still go home. I'll come home from a loss and my wife is like, oh shit, they lost. And, I'm stomping around all weekend for the rest of the weekend because, you kind of beat yourself up for what you could have done to maybe help them get over the hump. You can look back into, I've got 3 little ones right now. I've got 8, 6, and 4-year-old. And, we're hot and heavy in all the youth sports, and we're not keeping score. And anybody who, at least where I'm at, anybody who even considers talking about score gets kind of the evil eye. And so they spend their lives growing up in this situation where winning's not emphasized. It's about having fun. And, I get all that, I guess. But what people aren't understanding is some of those really impressionable years, the early years, the ones where they really a lot of their ideas become burnt into their brain. They're missing that piece. So when they get older, it's just, they don't have a relationship with it at all. For example, we we went to the playoffs this year. We played a team we had already beaten in UC San Diego. They're a really good football team. They came up here. We assumed that, since we were since we already beat them once this year, this is going to be a cakewalk, and they beat the crap out of us. They just came in and smacked us around the whole year, the entire game. And what you get at the end is you get almost this feeling that, the coaches are more upset than the kids are. And again, this isn't an indictment of my kids. This is how it is. And so it's kind of, what it's going to do is it's going to force us old guys. And I consider myself kind of, I'm over the hump now. I'm on the back nine with my career. We're going to have to adapt to them. A couple of years ago, I thought to myself, just because of the exposure of all the ideas that are out there, being a young coach coming up right now would be really hard because you have so much information coming in from every direction. And now I'm getting to the stage where I'm thinking the young coaches actually have the upper hand a little bit because they are coming. They've grown up in this environment, so they know how to relate to the athletes a little bit better. And I'm afraid I'm getting to the point where I'm not relating as well as I used to.
Interesting. Now, just to go back to that idea about, with the kids and not keeping score, my favorite comedian, Pete Correale, he said he went to his brother's game, his nephew's game, and he got to the game, and he said to his brother, he's like, oh, what's the score? And some woman turned around and she said, listen, it's not about the score, it's about having fun. And he said, so my brother turned around and said to me, yeah, well, we're having fun 15 times. They've had fun one time. But on that note, okay, you had said, no matter what anyone thinks, the idea of youth sports focusing on fun instead of letting our children experience what it's like to win and lose is killing sports. Now, I want you to clarify and expand on that only because obviously you do. You just said you have 3 kids. We don't want to kill their childhood. For some kids, it's not going to be all about that. So talk to us, expand more about this point.
Oh, Christ, this is going to turn into a political thing, Anthony. To me, the reason I say it's killing it because the idea of not keeping scores is a relative new one. I would say it's the last decade, maybe,
Sure.
Late 90s, the kids, you started doing some of that stuff. And there was, whatever, it's psychiatrists and stuff to say that, the whole, we're trying to not burn them up, but those kids are now becoming the adult athletes. So that generation of we're not going to keep score, we're not going to, everybody gets a trophy type stuff, that's all starting to turn into the people that I'm inheriting now from, they're graduating high school and they're coming to us. And what I mean by killing sports is it's just changing the everyone's attitude towards it. Now, that's me being a prima donna, probably thinking that my ideas are the best ones, and my sort of views of winning and losing are the only way. But it's been tough for me to adapt to that because I want my kids to. I want it to hurt when they lose, and what I mean by that is because those are the things that fuel you in the dog days of summer. Those are the things that push you during. We're in the middle of our spring quarter here at Cal, or a winter quarter here at Cal Poly. So we're in week 8 of a training cycle. It's it sucks right now. They're not playing right now for anything. They're just training. Everybody's getting tired. We got spring break coming, and their eyes are kind of loftily looking at that direction. And spring ball's coming. And when you have that sort of fire in your gut about winning and losing, it helps you push harder in the gym. It helps you want to lift heavier. It helps you want to grind during a run that's killing you. And we're kind of missing some of that because I'll get out in, certain runs with certain teams, and you're just like, holy crap, I can't motivate. I can't say the right thing to these guys and make them push any harder. And we've got more we can push, you know what I mean? So it's manifesting in ways that in their preparation, it's manifesting in just their whole approach to things. For me, for example, summers for a college strength and conditioning coach are absolutely pivotal. And the more kids you can get to commit to staying for the summer voluntarily, because NCAA regulates we can't make them stay, the more you're going to have exposure to them, and the more you're going to have them prepped right before they go to training camp. And in the early 2000s, when I was starting, we could get compliance from about 80% of the kids. So they would stay. They would just all get an apartment, and 8 guys in an apartment sleeping on couches, and we would just train all summer. And now we're begging them to stay. And it's the kids have other things that they're doing, and I got to go on vacation with my family. And in my mind, it's like, well, this vacation to wherever you're going may kill my season, and they don't understand that. So it's just an old coach who can't get out of his own way a little bit, just trying to hang on to maybe my glory days or whatever. But It's just, I need my kids to train hard. And if winning and losing is starting to kind of lose its power over them, it takes away from my ability to get them to push.
Yeah, and look, you're not alone in this idea as well. And it's funny. I was talking to you earlier about Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. I'll say that because this is a clean show.
Okay.
But he has a great quote, and what he's talking about is how people think problems are bad, but really, no, problems are good. It's like we talk about, like you see so much now, people talking about, hey, no, failures are okay. Failures are good. You want to fail. And he had a great quote saying, our struggles determine our success. And I think we see more books and more things like this as a reaction to what's going on in the rest of the world. So, so again, I don't think you're alone in this. So I think you make some valid points there. Good stuff.
Thanks.
Let's go on to some of your training. And look, I think everybody always talks about, we all go through plateaus. And at Cal Poly, you had an 8-week deadlift program pushing through a strength plateau. You got to. This is a warning to everybody else. You got to read or you got to listen to them first, because you can't just look at the program and say, "There's no way, this is crazy." But this is a hardcore program, and there are caveats to the program. Yes. You did say this is not a beginner program. This is for the number one thing is that somebody has to newbies don't even think about it. This is for intermediate to advanced lifters. If you don't have a coach, get one. Your technique has to be spotless. So talk to us about how this Cal Poly 8-week deadlift program came about, and then get into the program.
So it's actually before my days in Cal Poly. I was at San Jose State for 7 years. And when I was there, I at an RKC, met a guy named Gerard Rush. Gerard Rush is a guy who lives in San Jose. He's actually a bodybuilder, and we became fast friends at this RKC. And his style of training was different than anybody I'd ever seen. And what I mean by that is everything that he did was 20 to 30 reps, but none of it was light. So Anthony, when he would be like, "Hold on, let's lift together," and I'm like, "Okay, what are we doing?" "Well, we're going to do this, but we're going to go 20 reps, and it's got to be as heavy as it can be." And I was like, "Are you out of your mind?" And as he would explain and he's an Australian guy, so there's, we'll credit the sort of unorthodox thinking to a guy who's not, maybe a little more mainstream, American type stuff. But his connective tissue and his ability to push incredible amounts of weight just over and over again was something to marvel at. And so I took that idea, having trained somewhat, that way with him. And I had two guys who were getting ready to make the leap to the professional ranks. And both these guys who would be basically people you would consider to be freaks. A guy named Jerron Gilbert and another guy named Jeff Schweiger. And we were prepping them for their pro day. They both were going to turn out great numbers and times. And I thought, well, what we're going to do is we're going to put Jerron and Jeff on this deadlift program. And what it was 3 days a week, a heavy, light, medium sort of split. And we're going to push sort of the boundaries with their training a little bit. We're going to get, big time posterior chain work, and we're going to be very careful with everything else that we do, and that's going to be our feature. And so we did that with them, and we had a remarkable result. Jerron is actually one of the guys. I don't know if you remember back in the day, there was a video that went around in like 06. No, it wasn't 06. It was like 08 or 09 of a kid jumping out of a swimming pool. That's Jerron Gilbert. And I don't know if you remember that or not, but he had just an incredible explosion. He was a 290-pound defensive lineman. And so, he in the video, he submerges himself completely underwater and then explodes out of the water up onto the deck and sticks the landing. So just tons of power. And that was one of the guys that we were doing with. And we had an incredible result. So when I made the jump to Cal Poly, we decided we were going to use this on some of my guys who were returning from an injury, and we needed to fast track not only body weight gains for them, but just fast track strength throughout their entire bodies. So if you had the right person, the right candidate for it, say like a guy coming back from a shoulder or something like that, who could pin their scaps down and hold that neutral spine we need, we could use this on them. And so I had a couple of football players who were coming back from that injury, and I was like, we're going to do the deadlift program, and we're going to see if we can fast track them back physically. And when I was training with Gerard Rush, he would talk about, this style of training, you get this enormous growth hormone dump when at nighttime because of the type of stress your body's being put under, and the almost hormonal changes that you go through as a result of doing this are it's very anabolic, and you're going to put on a ton of muscle. And he was right. And so we started doing that with some of these kids coming back. I started doing it with some of my baseball guys who were coming back from things. And we were just seeing these crazy increases in strength, like all over their entire body. And it's been great. And again, I use it sparingly. It's an advanced program. If you read the article, and again, we're not endorsing anybody to run away from here and just start doing this. There are protocols that we have set up for this, and there are kind of deload times that we do for this. But the program is intended to really shock the body from head to toe. And I guess week 4, you go into a sets of 10 mode with kettlebell swings just for 2 weeks, and then you finish out your last 2 weeks with more high volume, sets of 20. I say high volume, sets of 10 is high volume, but you just get these enormous surges in strength from this.
So in week 1 through 3, let me just explain to everybody. In week 1 to 3, our heavy day is only 50% of our 1 rep max, but we're doing 3 sets and we go 20 reps. 20 reps, and it's kind of touch and go.
These 20 reps are not break it up. It is a sprint. It's 20 reps. Get it done as fast as you can, and ultimately what we tell the kids when they're doing this, because again, we're trying to elicit a very specific adaptation. They're not allowed to stop moving. So when you get to rep 13 or 11, when the clouds start to roll in, you're not allowed to stop and breathe. You have to keep pushing. So it's addressing a million different things, but that's when you're doing those 20 reps. It is a rep 1 through 20 with no break, and you're trying to move as quickly as possible.
So you said in the there's no other resistance training allowed during this program either, right? I'm not doing any upper body. I'm not doing anything else on those other days.
Which is usually the biggest deterrent for most people. Between you and I, Anthony, it should be the damn 20 reps. But in reality, what happens when people read that, they're like, when I put that out, the breaking muscle, the response on it was really big because people are like, oh, something different. And I probably got 50 emails that were, I really can't do my upper body. I can't do any of that type of stuff. And what you have to understand is the type of fatigue that we're creating with this is just beyond anything you can imagine. And if you're going to go in, like say we're setting this up for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you insist on going in on Tuesday, Thursday, and going out to your upper body, you're piling on more fatigue, and you're not allowing the body to recover from what we're doing on the deadlift days. And I've had many people attempt this, and they'll get to week 5, and they've been doing their upper body, and now they can't hit their numbers. And that's one of the big things is this is built out to follow the prescription as closely as possible. And if you're a kind of a gritty dude or gal, you should be able to hit your numbers on the last week. And what you'll have is people at week 5, they're missing, and you're missing it because you're not recovering. So
good stuff. Now, is like in week 4 and 5, you kind of tone down the reps with the deadlift, and so it goes only down to 10, and then you add 10 kettlebell swings right to that.
Yes.
What's the purpose of that one? What are you doing there? Why are you just doing it to switch it up? Is it kind of a mini deload? What is that?
And again, people who train with weights, you tell me that I'm going to hit failure at sets of 10, and that's a deload. In reality, in this program, that's exactly what it is. So what we do is we make a pretty significant jump in terms of percentage when you hit week 5, but you're only doing 10 reps. And what anybody will tell you when they do this is 10 reps feels like a walk in the park, regardless of load, because they're used to that 20. And like I said earlier, when you do this 20, it's rep 13-ish. It starts to get awful. And so they miss that rep, you know what I'm saying? They're staying beneath that time when the storm clouds roll through. And so to them, it's like getting a break. And the intention is to hit them with much heavier weights before you make this last push for your final 2 weeks of 20. And it helps sort of slingshot them forward so they can get their week 8 reps. I've taken realistically, probably about 20 guys through this and one woman. And it's that deload time is super important because it gives their body a little, the mileage is not accumulating so much. And just like if you're doing any hypertrophy work with anybody, or if you're doing any kind of strength cycle with anyone, if we stayed at 20 reps the whole time, that message starts to get completely dull and muddied up, and they're going to hit the wall around week 6. If you just kept trying to escalate through, another 3.5%, another 3.5%, you're going to hit the wall, and we're trying to avoid that big wall smash.
All right, definitely. I'll have a link to that article and the program if anybody wants to try that out.
You save people when you do this. Again, if you're a newbie, you will wreck yourself with this. So what we do with my athletes is they have to go through a couple of days of basically they're auditioning to do this, meaning we have to absolutely fine-tooth comb their technique with just a regular, just single rep deadlift. There can be no spinal movement. You have to be able to hinge to your hips really, really well. It's not for everyone. If you're a poor mover, don't attempt it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Let's go into the Qigong idea, because I love this because I first got introduced to it, but I didn't follow through. But at the RKC and John Duquesne. But you are a doctor of Qigong. And like I said to you earlier, this is another reason why I wanted to get you on too, because I think people are realizing the importance of recovery and looking for new ways to de-stress as well. Not saying this is easy to do, by the way. I'm just saying there's pieces of it, like you had talked about earlier, that that can help with de-stressing. So give us an overview of Qigong, and then let's talk about how you use it with your athletes.
Okay. So this is a really abstract part of this podcast, you guys. So Qigong is one of the 4 major pillars of traditional Chinese medicine. You've got acupuncture, the herbs, massage, and then Qigong. If you know anything about Chinese medicine and the whole yin and yang thing, and everything's based off of energetics, you have a better handle of understanding traditional Chinese medicine, which I can promise you is very confusing. Qigong is more of the more esoteric side of things. If you understand or have kind of just a general understanding of acupuncture, we were the mother to the ideas for acupuncture. So the meridian lines, the energy moving through the meridian lines, and then we don't use needles. It's more of intent-based type stuff. And when you're doing, like when I work on patients, so I've got a small clinic in town, and my degree is based in oncology, so I'm a cancer doctor. But most of my patients are, they're in the fight for their life, and they're battling something really horrible. But it's all the same ideas in terms of the way the energetics of the body work, and just like anything else, we need, motion is a lotion type thing. That energy needs to be moving. If it's for whatever reason not moving, and there are literally lists of reasons why energy will stop moving through the body for whatever. That's where you see disease start to creep up. That's where you see performance start to decrease. That's where we see just a lot of the scarier things that we all potentially face, kind of where it manifests. And so the way it ended up finding its way into the weight room with us was I was working with all these patients who were, they're in the fight for their life. They're doing things like chemotherapy, which is an absolute just, it's like you have a rat in the house. And instead of bringing an exterminator in, you just take some dynamite and stick it in the living room. And that's kind of what chemotherapy does to a person's body. And so when they come to us for help, and to be more of an adjunct help or whatever, what have you, we do a lot trying to battle the fatigue part of things. We try to battle the chemicals that they're being administered to them. And we are trying to help them keep their kidneys going, because kidneys in the Chinese world are sort of they're like your batteries. It's where everything, if you think of adrenal fatigue, it's all kind of roots back to that type of idea. So when I was working at San Jose State and I was doing all my doctoral research, and we were doing, stuff with cancer patients, I started thinking to myself, well, if we can use this for people who are deathly ill, and we can get them to rebound from chemotherapy and things that really just knock people over. Why wouldn't this work with healthy folks? And when you're talking about healthy folks, you're talking about athletes who are training and they are getting, fractional amounts of fatigue that, a cancer patient would be experiencing. Why couldn't we do things for them to keep their head above water? And so I started, my doctoral research was actually on performance variables for athletes during competition time. So we looked at a couple of variables that I considered to be sort of outlier things, but things that were going to impact their performance. So less skill-related things and more, how did you sleep the night before? Where were your emotions during the game? Did you have a bunch of chatter in your head while you were playing? Were you nervous? How did you feel at the end of the game energetically? And what I mean by that is not so much huffing and puffing, but more like if I needed to play a fourth or a fifth quarter or a 10th inning or what have you, do you have enough in your tank to go? And our results on that were outstanding. And so when I got to Cal Poly, I was kind of on an island. And when I left the Bay Area, that's where my school was, all of my classmates, sort of my sifu, which is in Chinese is like your master teacher. All the people who were the people that I was in camp with, I came here and I didn't have anybody. And so I was on an island by myself. And my sifu said, when you graduate with your doctorate, that's when the learning begins. And, all the classroom stuff is great, but when you go out and you actually start working is when you're going to get your greatest education. And he couldn't have been more right in my situation because, again, I left my tribe and I came here and I was alone. And so I started looking into CrossFit people. We knew you can read all the Chinese research you want. With the Qigong practice, what you see with a lot of cancer patients is you can see inflammation markers drop. So when they're doing a regular Qigong practice, whether it be working with someone individually or they have their own practice, which basically looks like Tai Chi, all these patients end up having these remarkable rebounds from an inflammation standpoint, which of course we all know inflammation is just the number one reason why the wheels come off for most people and for athletes in particular. And so as I was reading all that research and doing all this work, I was like, well, if I get inflammation markers down on everybody, we're going to have something important. And so I started working with a few CrossFitters and started kind of positioning myself here in town to start working with higher level athletes. I had a couple endurance people, so distance runners, and what we were getting were they were able to just keep training. And with these practices, they were able to recover in a much more complete way. They didn't find themselves getting into the red at all as far as their training went, and so they could continue to push. And as fatigue sets in, if you're not recovering appropriately, that's when injuries happen. That's when your training just hits the wall. And what we found with this is they weren't experiencing that. So to wrap this up, finally, my assistant, Chris White, who's still with me right now, he was going to grad school. He was getting ready to do his thesis, and we sat down and we wanted to do a thesis on Qigong and how it impacted recovery for athletes. And the way we were going to test that, because getting IRB approval and all the university approved blood work and all that stuff is super hard to do. So we wanted to find a way where we could measure recovery almost implied. And so we built out I wrote a program for Pavel Sapsulin, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago to spearhead some of the research that he's finishing right now. And it was just a real sound GPP, just general physical preparation deal. And we took that program, which we had a ton of success with just from a programming perspective, and we assigned just your arbitrary percentages that everybody would run, max numbers off of. And we took our volleyball team, our football team, and our women's soccer team. And we did a test on, bench press, front squat, vertical jump, blah, 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 deadlift, all kind of your general things they were going to see in their program, kind of max on everybody. And then we plugged them into this same exact training schedule. So everybody had the same lift. They were doing the same things, and it was based off their own percentages. And we took 2 groups. We had a group get up at 6 a.m. every morning with us 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And we did a Qigong practice, where I led, and it looks like a Tai Chi class, basically. And we addressed very specific things that I was concerned with in order to help them recover faster. And then our control group was just everybody else who was training and not participating. It was a huge study. We had over 100 people to begin with. And then we finished with, in each group, there was over 40 some people in each group. And the testing numbers that we saw with the Qigong group were just astonishing. And what I mean by that is, Anthony, we had probably between 10 and 12 guys on a front squat in 8 weeks put over 100 pounds on their max. And we had, a couple of my women, they were pulling, 180 kilos on a deadlift. The surges in strength they got were pretty incredible, and it was just based off the fact that they were recovering. And we did on the side with that, we also did some kind of a wellness survey that they did every Friday. And they were asked some sort of just general questions. It didn't have anything to do with sport or didn't have anything to do with weightlifting. It was more about like kind of wellness-based stuff, like, what's your attitude towards this and that. And what we saw with the people involved in the Qigong group is they didn't emotionally get themselves into the gray area at all. They started out, the two groups were kind of even when they started out, and then the Qigong group kind of leveled off, which told us with their emotions stuff, they were staying fairly level. There weren't like these radical ups and downs. And the other group was having these big, these big peaks and valleys where finals and midterms and my girlfriend and all this other stuff that was impacting them in a way where they weren't able to stay super focused, whereas the Qigong group just stayed steady the whole time. And it's pretty remarkable research. We're in the middle of putting manuscripts together for scientific journal stuff, and once that gets out, it's gonna have people are gonna have to look at it.
Nice.
Because recovery anymore is that's what we're chasing. Yeah. I mean, the bodybuilders have been recovering with steroids for 50 years now, and they've known the whole time that's why they do it. Is that it speeds the recovery up. They can go harder for longer, and they can go back the next day and do it again. And since we're not taking part in any of that stuff, we have to find other ways. And what we've found is with the approach that we took and the program that we put them on, we were able to sort of recreate similar type effects.
What exactly, what were you doing with them in terms of, could you just kind of try to, I know it's easier on video and you said it's kind of like Tai Chi, but how long were you doing it for? When were you doing it in the day or in relation to the workout? And just give us a little rundown about specifics.
So with Qigong and with some of these more mystical practices, now I will be the first one to say this is very esoteric stuff. It's going to test most people's what are you willing to believe, that type of thing. And it does have a big spiritual component to it. And it's not necessarily any specific spiritual walk, whatever religion, and we're all kind of an all-comers type thing. But it's going to push someone's belief systems a little bit. I took something called the Taoist 5 yin organ exercises, which is a practice I use for myself during my medical school time, because we were responsible for cultivating ourselves and developing kind of robust energy, so that when we worked on our patients, we had enough for everybody. And so what it looks like to you, again, it looks like Tai Chi. It's me in front, and we're talking in the very beginning of the practice. And what I mean by that is like the first week or so, we were explaining to them exactly what we were doing. This exercise is for the heart, and this is going to clean the blood, and this is going to help push anything out that's not supposed to be there, and robust red blood cells and your ability to carry oxygen. We were talking to them about those things as we were doing these movements. And you go through the whole body, and it's called the Taoist 5 yin organ. The 5 yin organs are the lungs, the heart, the kidneys, liver, and spleen, all of which are kind of the governor of the body when you talk Chinese medicine. And so if you can get those organs energetically in a good place, everything in the body thrives. And all the qualities that those organs are responsible, they thrive. So for example, the spleen and stomach are paired, and the muscles are governed by the spleen and stomach. So when the spleen's happy, the muscles thrive. And so as we did this, we were coaching them up on what to be thinking about. And so we're going through the kidney exercise, and you're scooping the water, and you feel the water filling the kidneys up, and it's replacing what's been zapped, and all this good stuff. And it gets really kind of complicated. But what we were doing is we were setting intention. So I took this old practice and I steered it toward athletics. So everything we would talk about, instead of health and wellness, it was, this is how it's going to increase performance. So you would do, the liver exercise. The liver governs the tendons and the connective tissue. So we wouldn't really talk about the liver in the way of, the liver, gallbladder, and the functions through digestion and all that stuff. It was more of, the liver is responsible for your tendons and your connective tissue. So feel the connective tissue getting stronger, and the rebound and the tendons getting stronger. And we would talk them through that. And then after a while, we didn't have to talk anymore. They knew exactly what to do. And you could just see it happening. About week 3, you could see the two groups start to separate. And like we talked about the deadlift program, when you're running percentages, you're trying to hit specific numbers. You could see at about midway point, maybe a little bit later in our study, the non-Qigong kids started missing their numbers, whereas the Qigong kids just kept plugging away and hitting all their numbers. So we knew we were on to something about week 5. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm answering your question well enough, because it's so different than what everybody else thinks of.
Yeah.
Think of that. Think of going to the park and there's that old Chinese lady in the corner, and she's doing this very slow, beautiful martial artsy stuff. That's exactly what it is. But now we're layering in very specific intention with it.
Cool. Very interesting stuff. Cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. You will finish up with the something that certainly everybody's interested in the Strength Coach podcast, and that's speed. And I saw the article on Breaking Muscle, but didn't go into too much detail about specifics. So I wanted to just kind of have you give us an overview. You said the name of the article was "The Key to Speed is in Your Spine." So let's talk about what exactly you mean by this.
Okay, so first I have to, and this is somebody you may want to get out and reach out and contact. This is David Weck's stuff. So David Weck, Bosu Fitness, Bosu Ball. He's the mastermind behind a lot of this, and I've just been fortunate enough to be a friend of David's for a long time, and he's working on a really important project I'll say it here first, is going to change the landscape of the way we look at speed training, because he's discovered a few things, and he's a true student of movement and all that type of stuff. And so I have partnered with him. Cowboy Strength has partnered with Weck Method, Chris White and myself, and then have partnered with David to kind of investigate some of these ideas, and we're implementing some of his ideas and what we're doing with the athletes. The idea is most speed coaches teach, especially when you're talking about linear speed, straight line stuff, that you want the head and the kind of the midsection of the bodies to stay quiet while the limbs express the speed. And it's taught everywhere. Everyone does this. Everyone I've ever been around has done this. And David has a completely different set of ideas. So I'm going to put a pin in that right now. Let me give you a little back history on this. So my mentor is a guy named Mike Kent. He's the head strength coach for University of Florida football. And he was with me my senior year, and then he mentored me. And before I went on to do my own thing and stuff. Coach Kent's a genius. And one of the things he's particularly good at is developing change of direction speed in his athletes. And so I was just one of those super fortunate people that came up through his program and learned his speed, change of direction stuff. And then I went to work with Tommy Hoke, who's now up at Michigan State with Ken Manning. And Tommy was the one that kind of polished the speed stuff up for me. And for years now, no matter where I've been, so this is my second stop at Cal Poly. So I started at Cal Poly, and then I spent a long time at San Jose State. Now I'm back at Cal Poly. One thing we've kind of hung our hat on, especially with football, was we're going to outrun everybody. We're going to be able to run circles around everyone. So if we're winning, it's because they can't keep up with us. And the change of direction program, as I continued to work on it myself, I started developing a bunch of stuff through my experience through the martial arts and through some of the Z Health stuff. I don't know if you know about Z Health, but it's all about how the brain responds to everything it comes in contact with. And I started developing things from Coach Kent's change of direction stuff in my own way that was helping my athletes get into better position when they're turning. And through the martial arts stuff, we have a very specific way of teaching them to step when they decelerate, so that when they go to turn, their feet are always in great position and they're able to access very specific parts of their foot and clear their hip as they're bringing their leg through when they make the turn. So back to David Weck and the spinal stuff that we were originally talking about. I've been looking for, kind of on low key, looking for somebody to talk to me about the spine and the head in a way with linear speed, the way I understand change direction work. And when David presented this to us, it took me about 10 minutes to listen to him talk. I realized that this is what I've been waiting for. What you see with speed coaches, like I said, you're trying to keep the head still, you're trying to keep the spine still, and the arm, the spine becomes a kind of transmitter of force out to the limbs, I guess is the best way to say it. And what David says is when you look at the truly fast people, so you look at, Bolt run, and you look at Tyson Gay run, and you look at Chris Johnson run, you look at a lot of these kids who are about to do their 40 at the combine here today, the ones that are inherently fast, they have this really unique quality that ends up basically taking their head and putting it over the foot that's landing. And David's trademarked the term head over foot. And what you're seeing spinal flexion and rotation happening from like the thoracic spine. And what we're seeing is the spine actually becomes a producer of force in addition to sending the work out to the legs and the arms. And so he's developed an entire lifting program around this. And it's stuff that we're doing with my soccer team right now. And we're kind of 50-50 doing it with football. And I'm doing it 100% with my pro day guys who are prepping. And I'll tell you what, Anthony, the speed differences in these kids that we have seen in the last 4 to 5 weeks have been, I can't explain it, man. Fluidity, just sort of, you take a kid who's maybe a little bit chunky in the way they move, they're not super graceful, and once they kind of start owning this idea of this head over foot thing, and they start owning some of the things that we're doing training wise, where we're getting the low lats involved in a lot of their training, you start to see this spinal flexion and rotation happening, shoulder down and back, hip up and forward, and you're taking kids who kind of don't look super athletic, and all of a sudden they look like they know what they're doing. And it's been quite remarkable. I strongly recommend you, Anthony, reaching out to David, because he would be perfect for this.
Okay.
But his ideas and those things were, what we've done is we've hooked up with Breaking Muscle, because Breaking Muscle has such a gigantic audience. So that article that you read was kind of my bait article, so that we could get people interested in what David's talking about. David's going to completely unveil everything for Breaking Muscle's readers over the next probably 4 to 8 weeks, because he's gonna write sciencey piece, and then I'm gonna write experiential stuff. Chris will write experiential stuff, and we're gonna rotate that way, so we can start getting the word out about this. Because I tell you what, man, the proof is in the pudding, and I would stand next to any speed coach in the world, and the only thing that really matters, and this is something that David always talks about, is what does the clock say?
Yeah.
And that's the results rule type thing, and what we're seeing right now has been nothing short of miraculous, and we're going to turn out great pro day times. We're going to turn out great speed stuff with just my teams right now, and it's been amazing. It's complicated stuff. You can't go into this, especially when you talk to David, because David's so damn smart. It's just remarkable where his head is, and he's thinking on a plane completely outside of what anybody else is doing. We all are kind of, whether we know it or not, even if we think that we're doing something special or different, we're all kind of stuck in a little bit of a box, and we're all just roaming freely inside of it. David's way outside of the box, and he's thinking about things from a completely different place. And his lab that he has down in San Diego, I mean, he's in there grinding all the time, just looking at this and testing that, and he's come up with something I think that's going to be truly game-changing.
All right. Well, it sounds interesting enough. We're going to have to explore that a little bit more and get some more details as it comes out. So good stuff. Doc, it's been great talking with you about just some different methods, and I love kind of where you're coming from, and taking some of these methods. You got your lab there at Cal Poly as well, so and your own practice. So it's great to kind of refreshing to get some different thoughts in here. So thanks so much for coming on today.
No problem. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 203 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Special thanks to Chris Poirier, Aaron McGurr, and the folks over at Perform Better. You can check them out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Chris Holder for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning and performance enhancement. Rachel Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Kyle Kiesel and Functional Movement Systems. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. And of course, remember, you can try strengthcoach.com out for 3 days, just $1. You'll have access to all the articles, videos, and programs, as well as the best forum on the net. It's the only place to have full access to Coach Boyle. He's on every day. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. My name is Anthony Randy. You can reach me at strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.